So I really like the idea of the interactive storyteller, especially because it's narrated by Varric, but I kind of want to do something a little bit different because I really wanted you, the viewers, to kind of not only see the decisions that I made throughout Dragon Age Origins and Dragon Age 2, but also to get a better look at who my version of the Hero of Ferelden as well as Hawke was as an individual. Starting with my Hero of Ferelden and Warden Commander, I went with a circle mage by the name of Desmund Amell. The kind of backstory for that character is Desmond Amell was taken at an early age to the Circle because his powers kind of manifested in front of some of the other noble families, and before his family could really react and try and get away, the Templars were already upon him and said, hey look, we're not going to do anything to the kid, but he's got to come with us to the Circle of Magi. So, against what they wanted to do, the parents let him kind of go there, and that's where he's been the entire time. And although he's very good at many different forms of magic, he kind of specialized in spirit healing, mostly for the fact that way, if all he knows is the healing arts, he can't really be seen as this horrific mage that a lot of other people tend to seem of mages. So that way, he really can't get into too much trouble. But of course, that didn't work out after the harrowing and after Joanne's little charade and how that all turned out. But from there, he at least was able to join Duncan and the Grey Wardens. And that was kind of the backstory I was going for Desmond Amell. He was really somebody who was, no matter where he went, even though he had the mission of trying to stop Loghain as well as the darkspawn, he was really trying to act as a force of good. No matter where he went, he would try and take the time, if there was any available, to help people out. To not only do it because it was the right thing to do, but also to prove that mages can actually be a friend to the people. They're not always this scary, mysterious force of unlimited power. And throughout the story, Desmond Amell came across many different companions. They all stayed with him throughout because he really helped each one of them in their time of need or with their own little personal demons or missions they needed to kind of work out. And so he really just kind of inspired that loyalty amongst all of them. And that's why Desmond's love interest was actually Morrigan. The reason being because they kind of helped each other out as far as their personality and who they were as people. In Morrigan, Desmond was able to see that he can go ahead and attain more power because sometimes that's what's necessary in order to get things done, because not everything is sunshine and rainbows and happy-go-lucky. Sometimes you're going to come across certain enemies or certain conflicts where force is going to be necessary. You're not going to be able to talk it out like he's used to. But at the same time, he kind of affected Morrigan to where she was not so cold and distant towards others, especially towards Desmond, and they kind of learned to, care and love for one another, and that kind of happened throughout the story. When it came to the Urn of Sacred Ashes, Desmond was able to find the location with the help of Brother Gentivi in the city of Haven, which was overrun by a bunch of dragon cultists that kind of worshipped the high dragon that was there as what they believed the reincarnation of Andraste. And upon fighting them, because there was no way in hell he was going to go ahead and corrupt the ashes, he went through a series of trials that kind of challenged him in both mind and body until he was eventually able to attain a pinch of the ashes that he needed to try and heal Arl Eamon. And of course, upon arriving to Redcliffe, he kind of saw the entire town kind of all sorts of screwed up because of the undead horrors that were apparently coming night after night. So rather than kind of just leaving them about their business and continuing on his mission, of course, Desmond stuck around with his companions and decided to help them out. And upon driving them back, found out that not only, as he already knew, that Arl Eamon is ill, but also that there's some dark forces coming from Redcliffe Castle. Upon further investigation, you kind of find out that his old buddy Joanne was kind of behind what was going on there to a certain extent, and found out that because of the fact that Arl Eamon was so sick, Connor made a deal with a demon to try and get even more power, because it's found out that Connor is actually a mage himself, to try and help out his father, but unfortunately it took a turn for a worse. He became possessed and ended up causing all of the mayhem that was going on in Redcliffe. But thankfully, due to what Desmond had done as far as helping out the Circle of Magi and their conflict, he was able to get mass amounts of lyrium, so he didn't have to go through with Joanne's original plan, which was sacrificing Isolde for the blood magic ritual in order to be able to enter the Fade and try and stop the demon. And upon doing so, Desmond was able to cross into the Fade and kill the demon and not only save Connor, but also kind of avoid any kind of needless bloodshed or any really evil blood magic rituals in order to do so. And then upon using the pinch of the sacred ashes, was able to revive Arl Eamon from that state. And upon entering the Dalish forest to try and get the Dalish to help out in the efforts against the Blight, that's where Desmond met Zathrian and learned about the curse of the werewolves that was now affecting his people. And upon going through the mission of trying to find Witherfang, he actually found out the true story behind the whole situation, as to where, unfortunately, Zathrian's own son and daughter were murdered, and so it was a very dark situation. But this blood feud and this spell was actually created by Zathrian, which was causing these werewolves, which was now affecting Zathrian in turn. So upon finding this out, and finding out that Witherfang and the Lady of the Forest are as one, he decided to try and kind of broker peace. He was able to go ahead and get Zathrian to realize that he can no longer hold on to his hatred, because not only was it destroying the humans and anybody that was entering the forest, but it was also destroying his own people. And the other way to end it would be for Zathrian to not only give up his own life, but also be giving up the life of the Lady of the Forest, Witherfang, because they're kind of tethered to one another. So upon doing so, the curse would finally be lifted and everybody would be free. And that was really the right thing to do. In seeking the aid of the Dwarves of Orzammar, Desmond was kind of caught in the middle of a political battle between Balin and Harrowmont, both having some kind of claim to the throne. Harrowmont because of the fact that it was said that Balin's father, the old king, wanted him to be the new king because of the fact that Balin supposedly was the one that actually killed his brother and then framed his other sibling for it, and even poisoned his own father in a bid for power. And so in order to be able to get any kind of assistance from Orzammar, he had to first kind of solve this political situation first. So which he discovered he actually needed to find a paragon, or just somebody of some kind of great importance that would be able to kind of get rid of this deadlock between the members of the council and finally decide who's to be the king, and then from there get support. And that's where, with the help of Oggrin, Desmond kind of went with his other companions deeper and deeper into the taigs of the deep roads to try and search for the only known living, or still supposedly living, paragon known as Branka, to try and get her support. And upon finally finding Branka, you find out that she's kind of been driven mad in her obsession of finding the Anvil of the Void, which is said to have the power to go ahead and create golems, which would be a lot of help against the Blight, as well as just the darkspawn in general, and would be even greater help to the people of Orzammar. But she's taken it too far and has sacrificed her own people and even her own kind of side lover to do so. So Branka uses you to get deeper into the Caradon Taig to try and find the Anvil of the Void, to which you find it. And you hear the dark, twisted secret of the Anvil of the Void, to where it actually uses Dwarven souls to go ahead and be thrown into these golem bodies to create them. And that's where you're kind of stuck with the choice to it. You can either side with Branka, who's willing to use the Anvil of the Void to create new golems and help out your effort, or to help out Caradon to destroy the actual Anvil of the Void, destroying it and all of its dark secrets, and finally putting things to an end. And in turn, Caradon offers to make you a crown that would actually be used to try and you get to pick which one you want to be king. So of course, upon thinking about it, I mean, it's absolutely wrong to kind of force people or their souls into these golems. And even upon finding the secret of Shale, that she was actually, well, for starters, Shale is a she, and was a female dwarf who volunteered for it, that's a little bit different than what they've done, because there's a mass record of many different prisoners or other people that were kind of forced into this role. And that's something Desmond will never want to see happen again. So he sided with Caradon, unfortunately ended up meaning the death of Branka, and he assisted Caradon in destroying the Anvil of the Void and was forged a masterwork crown to choose whoever he wanted to be the new king of Orzammar. And upon returning to the assembly, it was kind of a tough decision to choose between the two, because Desmond during his travels did find the note to where it was heavily implied that actually it was Balin that not only poisoned his father but killed his sibling and blamed his other siblings, so all of those rumors end up actually being truth. And he was a very power-hungry individual, and you saw what kind of lengths he was willing to go, whether it be lie, cheating, stealing, and so on, just to get his way. So, although the fact that he's less traditionalist, like Harrowmont, which unfortunately Harrowmont's kind of set in his ways, he kind of wants to stick to just the dwarves, and unfortunately enforce the caste system, which means that people who are casteless are treated like shit, and that's absolutely wrong. He kind of had to go with Harrowmont, because Harrowmont was still more for the people. He did always have the Dwarven people in his heart and mind, as to where Balin really was only concerned about his own self and his own power. So Balin really seemed more of a tyrant, as to where Harrowmont may be a traditionalist, but he seemed more of a person of the people, with the exception of the whole castless thing. So, I mean, either way, both of them are bad choice, almost kind of like real politics, but that's neither here nor there. But Harrowmont was the choice that Desmond went with. The lesser of two evils, so to speak. Which brings us to the Broken Circle. Upon returning to the Circle of Magi that Desmond had actually been at for almost all of his life, and to find out that the first enchanter's own apprentice kind of went power-hungry when it came to blood magic and decided he was going to be more powerful than everybody else and even take down the Chantry if he needed to, because he has that kind of pride and power to do so. And he's kind of the whole reason why the Circle of Magi is in disarray. So you end up finding this litany that's actually able to break the mind control through blood magic that the apprentice is able to use and kind of save Irving and a lot of the other mages and keep the rite of annulment from actually happening, which the rite of annulment is when the Templars decide, hey, things are too bad, it's time to nuke it from space, it's the only way to be sure, kill all the mages. And that's absolutely something Desmond didn't want to do. And yet again, this was also a perfect opportunity for Desmond to prove that not all mages are bad, and that again, they could be used as a force of good. And with the help of his companions, that's exactly what he did. Now, he did come across a Templar, a young Templar by the name of Cullen, who was unfortunately imprisoned for weeks, possibly even months, just tortured nonstop, who really wanted nothing more than all the mages to die. Of course, Desmond, although feeling sorry for Cullen in his situation, could not accept that request. With all of his allies rounded up, and with Eamon back in better health, Desmond decided to take his companions and his forces to the fight, which was in Denerim. Not so much more of an actual war just yet, but more of a political conflict, more between the Landsmeet and just everybody that was there. And upon finding a lot of the dark deeds and other kind of things that Loghain was pulling behind the scenes, he was able to convince the Landsmeet that Loghain was not fit to lead, and he was actually a traitor to Ferelden. Which is unfortunate because Loghain was just so obsessed with not getting Orlais involved and was afraid they were going to try and take over. This is the kind of lengths he went for Ferelden. So he definitely screwed up. He betrayed, Duncan and the Grey Wardens and a lot of Ferelden, and he did a lot of dark things, but he wasn't as evil as everybody thinks. But regardless, unfortunately, Desmond decided to pick Alistair as the new king, although Alistair is kind of childish at times. He definitely felt that he had the spirit and the motivation that the people needed. He would be a person of the people, would be able to hear what they need, be able to try and help them accordingly. And sometimes people need kind of a push to grow up, take responsibility, and get things done. And Desmond honestly believed that Alistair was capable of this. As for Honora, she was able to rule before, but the only issue is that she was also one of those individuals who seemed very obsessed with power. The one thing that proved that more than anything is when it was decided that Loghain had to die, Desmond couldn't bring himself to do so. It was more of a personal thing for Alistair. Alistair insisted that had to be the way, that he couldn't join the Grey Wardens. And so it was Alistair that actually ended up beheading Loghain. And no sooner than Loghain gets beheaded, you have Honora covered in her own father's blood, and she's like, oh hey, if Alistair doesn't want to be the king, I can be the queen, just give power to me. So it's really a bad sign. It just kind of shows that she's a lot like her father when it came to having control of the situation. So that's why Alistair was picked as the new king of Ferelden. With the forces ready and the land united, the Warden had one more promise to keep on behalf of Duncan to the Dryadens as far as finding out what happened at Warden's Keep. Upon going there, he was able to see a bunch of different flashbacks, and Desmond was able to discover that the Wardens themselves turned to blood magic and a lot of dark things to try and oppose, at that time, the Mad King who wanted the Wardens to bend knee, but they weren't going to stand for such injustice. So it was one of the few times where the Wardens actually got caught in a political battle versus just fighting the darkspawn. And upon finding Sophia Dryden kind of possessed by a demon, he decided to cut the demon down rather than give its request, because it was feeding off of Sophia Dryden, and Lemmy wasn't able to get these secrets. It's not worth the price. So he decided to cut her down into where they were able to find Avernus. Now, he decided to spare Avernus because he felt that Avernus could redeem himself. because he was able, Avernus was able to kind of experiment with Warden blood to try and untap that potential that was there. Unfortunately, he did so with a lot of unethical and just crazy experiments. So he allowed Avernus to live. He allowed him to continue his research ethically, and as a way to kind of redeem his name as well as, for that time, the Warden's name. Which brings us to the Battle of Denerim. Having accumulated all the forces he needs, all his companions are there together with him, he decided to take the fight to the darkspawn and the archdemon. Now, before the fight actually happened, Desmond was approached by Morrigan, who offered the option of a dark ritual, because it was discovered that the only way to kill an archdemon is for a warden to sacrifice their own life. By killing the archdemon's soul goes to the closest considered darkspawn, and since wardens have the taint similar to darkspawn, it would go to the warden that kills them. These two souls kind of collide, killing the archdemon's soul as well as the warden's soul. And in a way to kind of avoid that, because he really did care a lot about Morrigan, and Morrigan cared a lot about him, he kind of decided to go through with the dark ritual, because he had faith that what Morrigan was doing was not of evil intent. So he went through the dark ritual to where the child that would be conceived, his son, would have the spirit of an old god within him. But it will also keep him from dying and being able to try and help out that situation as well. And Desmond ended up being the person that struck the final blow against the archdemon, and in turn ending the Fifth Blight and saving all of Ferelden. Originally, after the events of the Fifth Blight, Desmond wanted to seek out Morrigan, again to try and be there not only for her but for his child, but unfortunately was pulled away due to a bigger threat that was spreading between a civil war of two intelligent darkspawn, known as the Architect and the Mother, who were creating other intelligent darkspawn, which would be a absolute greater threat to all, not only just Ferelden, but also Thedas. So he had to kind of pull away from his original mission and kind of investigate as to what was going on there. After killing most of the darkspawn and children in Amarantine, it was discovered from the Architect's messenger that the Mother had another group of soldiers that were actually advancing on the keep. So that kind of left Desmond with a decision of either defending the keep, which would be important, but also saving what's left of Amarantine because the people are also important. And it was a tough decision, but Desmond had poured God knows how many sovereigns as well as just resources into building up and fortifying this keep that he decided that the keep should be able to hold for all the work that's been done. And the keeps, come and go, but the city of Amarantine and its people cannot be reclaimed if they're lost. So he decided to stay and fight and try and save the people in the city of Amarantine. And once peace had returned, Desmond continued on with his companions into his original mission of finding and slaying the Mother. But upon nearly making it to her, ran into the Architect once more. The Architect tried to explain that all he's ever wanted was freedom for the Darkspawn. And although that is an admirable goal, from what Desmond had seen, it was kind of hard to believe what would happen, especially with the case of the Mother, if you had intelligent Darkspawn. That would be, if you even had a small war band of intelligent Darkspawn, that'd be a greater threat than even countless Blights. And that's definitely something that the Lord of Thedas does not need. And as much as it pained him, because he kind of felt that there may have been some sincerity behind the Architect's words, but he couldn't leave it up to chance, especially when Darkspawn blood in itself is a slow poisonous death to anybody, just from any kind of contact. And the fact that Darkspawn corrupt the very ground around them. So he couldn't risk just having Darkspawn that were intelligent, that and choosing to be evil and causing death and destruction everywhere, or even the good ones accidentally causing blight sickness all over the place and kind of just wiping out the rest of life. So unfortunately, he had to make the tough decision of killing the Architect. And then from there was able to kill the Mother and kind of put an end to that conflict. With his work done and some level of calm and peace brought back to Ferelden and all of Thedas, Desmond went back to his original mission to try and locate Morrigan. And he was able to do so when she was actually standing in front of a working Illuvion, and she kind of said that Flemeth, the person that he ended up slaying for Morrigan, was actually more powerful than even Morrigan ever could imagine, and that she believes that Morrigan never actually was human, was something much darker, and that she should definitely be the force to look out for. And that's why Morrigan was going to take their child that had the soul of the old god within it and kind of take it to a place to where she can kind of nurture the child and, you know, have plenty of time and be able to try and gain that kind of power that can kind of stop whatever Flemeth has planned, or just anything else for that matter. And rather than seeing her go, Desmond was able to try and talk Morrigan into taking Desmond along with her. So the two of them traveled into the Illuvion, and nobody knows what happened to them since.
No, I don't.
You didn't buy any guns? Ah! You just got me killed! Oh, I just got eaten by a shark, so I was too busy asking why the hell you didn't buy